Hi there, welcome back to Greek. In this video, we will take a look at vowel sounds associated with O and U, and we will also take a look at some other vowel sounds in Greek. So without any further ado, let's start with O. O. So first we're going to look at long O in Greek, which is noted with an O and a line over it, just like this. Long O, and this is pronounced O. And thankfully for us, this doesn't have a complicated or complex spelling rule in Greek. Basically, it's just going to be an O. Just an O. And I think I'd like to point out at this point of time that in Greek, O is the connecting vowel. And this is a really big thing. If you remember from Latin, I said that the big secret to Latin was that I was a connecting vowel in Latin. And just as big here, I'm going to write this in white because it's really important. O is connecting vowel. It's the connecting vowel, and we'll talk about this in a second. Connecting vowel in Greek. And what a connecting vowel is it's the schwa sound usually in the middle, or actually it could be any sound, in the middle of two Greek roots or two Greek parts, and it brings a word together, like polemoscope. And let me write this here. Polemoscope. In this word, actually, the long O is here, polemoscope. But what I mean with this white thing is the O is the connecting vowel, really focuses on this O right here. In the middle, polemoscope, this is a schwa sound, but basically here you have two Greek parts. Polemos means war, scope means to see. And basically this is like a device, I think, where it can be used to spy, and it comes from the roots meaning polemo meaning war and scope meaning to see. So you have this root polem and you have this root scope, and when you put it together you have polemoscope, and you have that schwa sound in the middle. And this is very, very common to a lot of words, a lot of Greek words especially. And in Greek, most of the time, if not all of the time, the O is going to be used to connect these two roots together. So basically, the O is the connecting vowel sort of regardless of the sound. Usually it's going to be a schwa, sometimes it can be a long O. So whatever the O sound is, if it's an O sound or a schwa, O is the connecting vowel in Greek. And that's one of the highlights of Greek, is that O is its connecting vowel. And we'll see this again when we discuss the schwa, but I thought this was an appropriate time to mention that, O is a connecting vowel in Greek. So again, going back to the long O, wherever the long O is, it's just going to be an O, be it at the beginning or in the middle or at the end. But just remember that O is the connecting vowel in Greek, so it's very, very common. So again, you might see it representing the long O sound. Okay, that's it for long O, and now we can move on to O with one dot, which is pronounced aw. Aw, somewhat like A with two dots, but not quite. This is looks like this, O with one dot, pronounced aw, aw. And in Greek, there's two ways to spell this sound. Basically, it can be an O or an AU, an AU. And basically, the thing with this is it should be pretty easy to discern which one is going to be used. First of all, even though the dictionary diacritic, this symbol right here is given for words containing O and AU, sometimes you can kind of tell they sound different. For example, words that have O in it, even though the symbol is like this, it might be more prolonged, I want to say, more like O, but for AU it's like aw. So there's a slight difference in the sound, and that might help you figure out if it's an O or an AU. O is kind of more elongated, somewhat longer, like O, like your mouth curves more a bit, but AU is just like aw. So don't go by that 100% because it really depends on the pronouncer, and different dialects of the word and different, accents and how that word should be pronounced. But most of the time, this, might be a tiny, tiny clue. But, you should never like really stick by that because that's not like a hard or, it's not like a set in stone kind of rule. So that's just one way to figure it out, maybe not so reliable. Another way to figure it out, which is really reliable, and you probably know what I'll say, are those roots. Those root words are definitely going to help you figure out if it's an O or an AU, and that's obviously the best way to go in trying to figure out if it's an O or an AU. And let's look at some examples. The first word I have here, actually, let me do the one with the O first. The word psychology. Here you have an O for the O with the dot, psychology. You might see it's a little bit elongated, psychology. Could be like a long O-ish, not quite, but psychology. The root here is psycho, meaning soul or spirit. If you recognize that, there's no doubt about this, it's going to be an O. And my example with AU is tautochrone. Tautochrone has the Greek root tauto, meaning tight, and that will give you the AU. So, best way to figure out if it's an O or an AU is definitely through those roots. Okay, so those roots are very, very, very important. Okay, so that covers O actually. We have covered the long O and this O with one dot. And pretty simple O. For long O, it's going to be just an O. For O with the dot, could be O or AU. Both equally good options, but it's really dependent on the roots to help you figure out which one is going to be used. So that's O, and now we're going to move on to U. U. Let me write U out. U. Now U's got a couple of sounds. So let's start with the first one. The first one is going to be the U with two dots. U with two dots, like this, which is pronounced, here let me make the dots better, it's pronounced oo, oo, it's like the long U, and in Greek, the spelling is going to be either a U, or, that's a comma, or EU, U or EU. Another spelling is OU, I keep on saying E, sorry, U, EU, or OU. Okay, now let me space this out a little better. 1 second. U, EU, OU. Okay, now I can write, I've written these down, now we can discuss them. First of all, OU, not too many. Not too often, or not too common. You're not going to see it as much as U and EU. Example words with OU are moussaka, right there, souvlaki. It's funny because they both are food words, so that might be something, but moussaka, souvlaki, not too often. OU, really, the main thing you're looking at, for the oo sound is it a U or an EU? That's the main concern. And there's some ways to figure out which one it is. For EU, this is ways to figure it out. If there's a Y sound before, if Y sound, the Y sound before, it's most likely going to be EU. So it's more likely. If it's the U sound, the EU is more likely as a spelling. Or another way to figure it out, or after the S sound. After the S sound, so if you have Sue as a sound, EU is, somewhat more likely. And examples of that are prosuki, so see here, SEU, or pseudonym, Another common example, pseudonym. It's got the S sound. Pseudonym. So if you have the S sound and then you have this oo sound, it's most likely going to be EU. Otherwise, if there's a Y sound before, as in U, which by the way is the next sound we're going to look at, but then EU is more likely. Otherwise, it's going to be just a U, like kudos. Kudos. Okay? So, this is kind of the main way to figure out, if a U or EU is going to be used. OU is not too often. The best thing to do would be to look at all the Greek words that have OU and then study up on those. And then, you'd just be left with U and EU to figure out. Okay, so that's the long U with 2 dots. And now we're going to move on to the Y with the U with 2 dots. Basically, it's kind of like a continuation of this sound. So the sound, we kind of covered this, is Y with U and 2 dots. So this is U. And again, there's 2 ways to spell this. Just talked about either U or EU. U or EU. The thing is, EU is going to be more common at the beginnings. So common at beginnings. The thing is, EU in Greek is a root meaning good. So that's why it's very common at beginnings of words. Otherwise, same rule follows. The Y with, the oo sound, the U, this is going to be a little bit more likely than the U, but this is also a good option. So basically you have to be careful with these. Again, the only thing that's really going to help you figure out which one it is going to be those roots. They are going to help loads. And examples with EU, euphemism. Euphemism. U does mean good here. It's like a substitute, a good word. Substitute for another word. Euphemism, eulogy, U in the middle. Agusia is an example. Agusia. Right there, agusia. See, you have that Y sound before. It's not agusia, it's agusia. You've got that Y. Example with the U is cumatophyte. Now, like I said, the roots can help you figure out which one it is. For instance, in agusia, gusio means taste. So if you figure that out, it's going to be EU. Cumatophyte in Greek, kimato, not exactly this root, but something else means wave. But if you can figure out that this is cumato, there's a couple other words with that root, you'll know it's just a U here. Just a U. So again, it really depends on the roots. These 2 are very good options. If it's at the beginning, it's more likely to be an EU most of the time, as you see in these 2 words. In the middle, there's a good chance of both. So again, those roots are going to help you out with that. So that covers U with 2 dots, without a Y and with a Y. And really, the only sound we have left for U is U with 1 dot. Now the thing with this, it's very rare in Greek, so the sound is very rare. Okay, so this is U with 1 dot. It's pronounced like book or took, and again, it's very rare in Greek. You're not going to see it often, so rare. But if you do see it, if it's in a word, I mean, where else would it be? But if it's in a word, or if it's present, I guess, you're just going to spell it with the U. Spell with a U. So this doesn't happen too often in Greek. Not a very common sound, but if it does, just keep it simple, spell it with a U, as in this word, which is pronounced basileus. Basileus. This U represents the U with 1 dot, the sound. Basileus. So again, you're not going to run into this often, but if you do, just spell it with a U. Okay, and that's trying to keep it simple from, for Greek. Okay, so that concludes U. And good news for us, we can move on to our final vowel sounds. Okay, so basically we're going to deal with the schwa, which we always save it for last. Save the best for last. That tricky schwa. Okay, so I'm just going to write other sounds. Basically other really means the schwa, because it could be spelled with all the vowels, it really doesn't belong to one certain vowel type. But okay, let's talk about the schwa. Okay, schwa looks like this, pronounced and just like every other language, really, it can be spelled with an A, E, yep, you guessed it, I, O, it doesn't end at U, or, yes, or a Y, sometimes. Okay, whoa, how do we know which one to use? Okay, so the Y is not very common at all, so we can go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, that's not a very good idea, but in Greek, if it has a Y, for the schwa, the Y will also represent another sound. So make sure to ask for the alternate pronunciation, and then you can figure out if it's a Y or an I or something like that. So Y you're not really going to see. So our main focus is on the 5 vowels, A, E, I, O, and U. First of all, we just mentioned at the beginning of this video, O is the connecting vowel in Greek. So obviously, O is going to be the most common. The most common. You're going to see it in middles of words, near the beginnings of words. Very, very common. It's connective, so you're going to see it virtually everywhere. Connective. So this is probably the #1 option for the schwa in Greek, if you don't know. A is very good at ends of words. At ends of words. A lot of words end in that schwa, and in most languages that's going to be spelled with an A at the end. So at ends of words. But E, I, and U are equally viable. They're, good choices. E, I, U, they're equally good. So equally viable. So how do we figure it out? Those roots are going to help. Roots. They're going to help you figure out, this sticky spot, the schwa, which is, what it's referred to a lot among spellers. The schwa is the sticky spot because it can be spelled so many ways. So, again, those roots are only going to help you with learning which letter, or figuring out which letter is going to be used for the schwa sound. So we know O is going to be most common, it's connective, mostly going to be in the middle. A can be in the middle, but mostly at the ends. So the ends, the schwas, that end words, it's going to be spelled with an A most of the time. E, I, and U, mostly going to be in the middle. They're equally good. So let's take a look at some example words. Okay, let me write this down here, and then we can talk about why each one is what it is. Let's start with A. Megaron is a Greek word. Now, the schwa is in the middle, but it's with an A, and we know it's with an A because it has the root mega, meaning large. So that's one way that's how the roots help us. Mega means large. Megaron. So here we know it's not going to be anything else. It's going to be an A, because we know mega means large. Okay, next one, with an E. Ergodic. Ergodic, here's at the beginning. At the beginning, what do? Because it's at the beginning, it's kind of easier. You know it's not going to be an O or an A, or it could be a U or an I, but you know it's not going to be an O or an A for sure, so those are crossed off. But you know it's going to be an E because it has the Greek root ergos, meaning work. Meaning work. So if you know that, you recognize that in the definition, you know this is going to start with an E. So that's how the roots help. Okay, the I. Now, you probably recall that the connecting vowel for Latin is I, and you probably recall that a lot of words passed through Latin from Greek before they went to English. So, the thing to remember is that a lot of the words have I as the schwa because they went through Latin before they came to English from Greek, such as this word, ritidrome. Sorry, not ritidrome, it's ritidome. 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 This is the schwa passed through Latin from Greek, and that's probably why this is an I. It also has a root in it, but the Latin might be an influencing factor. So watch out for words that went through Latin. Most likely, if it's originally from Greek, it's gonna be an O, but sometimes it's gonna be an I. So that's something to watch out for. But that's something interesting there, that the Latin might have something to do with it. Okay, with the O, we have many words that has the O in the middle. I have hippodrome. Hippos meaning horse, dromos meaning to run. But anyways, there's a lot of words that are going to be connected with an O for the schwa. Many words. There's a slew of words connected, connecting Greek words, or Greek parts, or Greek roots together. So O is very common, so you should expect to see that in Greek. And the final one I have for U, this is Xenarchium. See the UM right here? Xenarchium. Now is a common ending for lots of words, especially Latin words. But if you see it, you know it's not going to be an A, not really an O, not really an I or an E either. U is the best fit here. It just feels right. It looks right. So very common ending. So if you hear that, the U is going to represent the schwa. So that's another way of figuring out which vowel is used. So hopefully you understand how important the roots are, and how they can totally help you figure out if an A, E, I, O, or U is used for the schwa. Once you figure that out, or you have that, down, you should be good to go, because the schwa does pop up often, not only in Greek, but in every language, so something to look out for. But that's the schwa. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Y with the schwa, which is pronounced ya. Ya. Let me erase this. Okay, so the sound basically is, the schwa is still the same, but you have the Y with it. So Y, oh not that, Y and the schwa. This is pronounced ya. Make a better looking schwa. Okay, ya, pronounced ya. And because this is so similar to Y and U with two dots, which is U, there's really only two spellings for this, which are U, or, you probably guessed, EU, probably would be right. Again, U or EU, pretty similar to Y and the U with two dots, the U. Should be pretty easy to figure this out. EU, again, it's going to be common at the beginnings. Common at the beginnings. Very common at the beginning. So if you hear the sound at the beginning, you can be sure it's an EU most of the time. Again, similar to the Y and the U with two dots, you can figure it out through roots or root words. If it has the root EU meaning good, good. That's good for you. You know it's going to be an EU. But again, those roots are going to be very important here. They're going to come in handy because they can help you figure out if it's a U or an EU. Another way to kind of go about this is, if you know there's a C for the hard K sound, if C, the spelling C, for the hard K sound, the K sound, before this, it's going to be a U. Then it's going to be spelled with a U. Again, that's, very kind of, intuitive. It can't be an EU because that would make the C soft. And we can't have a soft C representing the hard K sound. It's not right. So if you have the C representing the K sound and you know it's spelled with the C, you should use a U because it can't be an EU. No way at all. So that's one way to kind of figure out U or EU. If there's a C in there, that can kind of help you figure out. Otherwise, it's pretty easy. You can kind of visualize them and kind of see which one looks right. That, is not a very, set in stone, again, way to think about it, but it can definitely help you. If you visualize the word doesn't look right, you see some problems with it, then don't go with it. Usually your first instinct is going to be correct. So go with that. Use those roots you've learned. That's going to be the main thing helping you. Those roots are going to help the most to figure out if it's a U or an EU. Let's look at some examples. With EU, we have Eureka. Eureka. Again, at the beginning, pretty simple. At the beginning, it's going to be EU. With the C, Hercules is an example. Famous Hercules. Again, you have the C representing the K sound before, but this doesn't happen too often. Like, it's not always going to be a C, but if there is, C representing the K sound, this is going to be a U. Sometimes in the middle of the words, it's probably safer to go with the U. At the beginning, safer to go with an EU. But then again, it all depends on the roots. But that's just a tip. And this concludes the Y and the schwa. So we have completed the other vowel sounds in Greek, and basically we've completed all the vowel sounds in Greek. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. Like I mentioned several times throughout this video and the past video, those roots are so important in figuring out what vowel to use, and this is going to hold true for consonants as well, which we'll explore in the next video. See you then!